As far as Roland was concerned, this Tuesday was going to be like any other Tuesday. For the last 7 years, he will wake up at 5 a.m. religiously and begin the 12-kilometer trek to the Julius Berger construction yard in Apapa, hoping that fortune will smile on him. He was a laborer, and the foreman at the construction site will sometimes require laborers to be hired on a daily basis for odd jobs on the site. If he was lucky, he would get called in 3 times a week and get paid 3,000 naira daily. He could never afford to use transportation, and since he lived in an uncompleted building with 13 other squatters, his major expense was on feeding. It appeared this particular Tuesday wasn't going to be his day, as the heavens opened and torrential rain poured on him as he made his way to work. Just another day in Lagos, he murmured to himself as he determined that no rain will stop him from the opportunity to earn 3,000 naira if he was lucky to be chosen. It seemed luck was not on his side, as the foreman said that there would be limited work because of the rain, and as such, Roland was out of luck. He decided to hang around a while to chat with the other laborers who were in the same situation with him, and at the same time pondering on his miserable lot in life. About an hour later, he noticed a small group of people making enquiries at the gates of the construction company, and couldn't understand why the security man was pointing at him. And then, the group of 5 males and 1 female walked over to him. "Are you Roland Etuk?" the oldest amongst them asked, to which he replied, "I am Roland Edem. How can I help you?" Again he was asked, "Is your mother's name Charity?" To which he replied, "Yes, her name is Charity Edem. Who are you people, and why all these questions?" There was confusion as a group of 6 prostrated on the floor and said, "The king is dead. Long live the king. You are the oldest male child of our late king, and you are now our new king." Roland looked at the people who lay on the floor before him as he tried to comprehend what was going on. He had a million questions he wanted to ask, but his mouth was numb. His mother has always told him his father died before he was born, but never explained why he had to bear her maiden name. Why did she lie to him? Why did he have to suffer so much in life if he was a prince, and not just any prince, the heir to the throne? The jubilation of his fellow laborers and friends jolted him back to reality as they lifted him up in the air. A few minutes ago, he was a jobless poor man, but now the king of one of the largest tribes in Nigeria. As they dropped him on the floor, you couldn't help but notice the majestic swag in his walk and the kingly aura about him, even though he still wore tattered clothes.
"Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me."
A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me," and divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, "How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee." Many times we miss the real meaning behind the story of the prodigal son. It's about coming to a place of realization of who you really are. It's being able to see beyond the mess around you and to see the message of your life. It is understanding that irrespective of where you have been, what you have been through, and what hand life has dealt you, there's still a place called home. Roland's story is a fiction that tells the story of a man's moment of discovery of who he really was. His ignorance of his background had led him to live a lowly life outside of the palace. He never knew he was a prince, so he couldn't tap into or benefit from the resources available to members of the royal family. He couldn't use royal connections to get a decent job. There was nothing royal about him until the moment of realization, and at that point, even though he was hungry, that didn't stop his royal swag. Even though he wore tattered clothes, that didn't stop the royal aura from shining through. This is the power behind the knowledge of who you are. The prodigal son also came to that same place of realization, and he said to himself, I would rather be a slave in my father's palace than be a wandering scavenger. There are two paths to gaining this knowledge. The first part is knowing who you are. The second part is knowing whose you are. The swag and aura are tied to knowing whose you are. In the play Romeo and Juliet, two young lovers want to get together and get married. However, there's one problem. They come from two families that are at war with each other, the Montagues and the Capulets. In a famous soliloquy by Juliet, she's complaining about the fact that she isn't allowed to see her love just because of his name. If he had any other name, there would be no problem. So she says, what's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name will smell as sweet. So Romeo would were he not Romeo called. While we can sympathize with Juliet in wishing that her Romeo had a different name than Montague, she could not have rightly said what's in a name if her daddy was called El Shaddai. El Shaddai is usually translated as God Almighty, but it signifies so much more. There's some controversy over what the word Shaddai means. For instance, some have suggested that it comes from the Hebrew word Shaddad, which means to overpower or destroy. However, the most promising understanding of the term seems to be that it is derived from the word Shad, which is the Hebrew word for breast. This indicates God's sufficiency and nourishment of his people. In Old Testament times, there was no manufactured formula that a child could drink. If a child was unable to get nourishment from its mother's breast or that of a wet nurse, the child would die. So the mother was not only a source of comfort and security, she was the very source of life for the child. In the same way, God is the all-powerful, all-sufficient source of our life. In a time when the world is so turbulent, when war and rumors of war abound, when poverty is at an all-time high, when extreme climatic conditions decimate towns and communities, when governments have become clueless and people cling to wickedness and evil, it becomes important to come to the place of realization of who you are. The decision is one only you can make, and when you have made that decision, you will know whose you are. A child of the double-breasted, all-sufficient God. He is the calm in the storm, the summer and the winter, the flower in the midst of thorns. He is our oasis. His name is El Shaddai, and he is my all-sufficient God. God bless you all.